I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, so there's a couple things that if we can, I'd like to blend together here, and one of them involves, if folks remember, a couple of, I can't remember if honestly, and brother Kaba, I don't remember if you were, if this was when you were with me or not, but the when I did this discussion about the Black Dollar Index a couple of shows ago, or a couple of weeks ago, something to that effect, and I talked about how I had come across this through the buying power Google alert that I have set up.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that there is this Black Dollar Index, and then which, as they say here at the very bottom of the page, were you on when I did this? I can't remember if you were. Okay.
Yeah, I was.
Okay, and at the bottom of the page here, this is what drew my attention the most. The Black Dollar Initiative is a consumer advocacy group dedicated to unifying the more than $1.4 trillion in yearly spending by Black Americans for racial equality. So they don't quite use the phrase buying power, although it must have come up somewhere in here because I got it by the Google alert.
I remember you hating on that too.
Right.
Because they didn't
use the rephrasing of it.
Yeah, I remember that.
All right. So and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name, but I had mentioned that this effort is put together or headed up by Kelly Roselle is how I believe you pronounce her name. Well, she reached out to me. She apparently saw the segment, and reached out and said essentially that she hope all is well, nice greeting, hello. She says she saw the clip, and she says that she does respect my perspective. She had heard somewhere about my critique of buying power at some point, but she says here that our goal is corporate transparency and accountability, and we do that by providing the Black community with digestible and tangible information in a public forum in order to make more informed purchasing decisions. As a marketer and consumer advocate, my mission is to challenge corporations to go beyond, and I hope
they're coming for you.
They're coming. Yeah,
the L is coming.
And you sometimes they get here before the show starts, and I'm grateful. But hey, shout out to the folks doing that work, man. The recycling, trash pickup. I appreciate them, and I certainly couldn't physically do that work anymore at this point. So I appreciate that, and we certainly need that work done. And I hope they are well paid. Essential work. I hope they are well paid and have good health care. So even if there's a slight interruption, so be it. But anyway, but so as I was saying, she says, again, as a marketer and consumer advocate, my mission is to challenge corporations to go beyond capital commitments that need to be repaid, as you mentioned, and take an active role in righting wrongs and building via philanthropic dollars, hiring practice programs, and supplier diversity. She says, I'm 100% not here to pander. And she has written about, she sent me a link where what she wrote about low-hanging fruit in marketing and advertising. And then she said, we are expanding our methodology to go much deeper, and I hope that when you do, you will take a second look. She looks forward, to some more communication. At one point, I think I skipped something, because at one point she says, no, I guess that's it. But my response was simply that my conclusions were not that I haven't taken a close enough look. My conclusions were based on the fact that we just don't agree. And that, as she explains, that as a marketer and a consumer advocate, I'm arguing that she's she's misrepresenting what buying power or spending annually represents, and that she's promoting mythology that doesn't help people to understand their economic condition.
Because she said she wanted to help us make better decisions.
She wanted to help us make better decisions,
which is one of the myths about Black buying power, is that we misspend our money, and we need to learn. We just need to learn how to, be better stewards of our money. Which is not the case.
So, but then this interesting, in quite another way, because in part what we were showing that she and this initiative does is follow along in a tradition, we could say popularized after the assassination of Dr. King and Jesse Jackson taking over and taking the more radical trajectory that Dr. King was on, and going back to the push and Operation Breadbasket version of appealing to corporate America to give some financial concession to segments of the Black community through hiring, diversity. What was the language that she uses there? That Hill Harper and others use all the time. That they want. Let me find that phrase real quick. Supplier diversity. In other words, getting Black suppliers and all this kind of. So that's what she's doing. That's what John Hope Bryant and Roland Martin were advocating. Bryant's his business does the same thing. It's more or less advocating on behalf of white corporations in Black communities to say this one is okay because they've hired certain amount of us, or they're buying or supporting certain amount of our businesses, and then it's repackaged and represented through bad journalism in part, and also intentional propaganda, as an economic reality and an economic strength that could be better used. So that's all I was really just trying to explain to her. It's not that I don't understand, it's that I understand and we just don't agree. And that was it. It's not,
essentially those all these people are just brokers. They're bridges, they're mediums, between us and corporations. Now you can say that you're being an advocate, for Black people, but basically you're an advocate for us to be treated more fairly within a system that is not designed on fairness. It's designed on exploitation. So you can't do that. You can't. There will be no fairness in this system.
And it's also, again, it's making an economic argument for what I'm saying is a political problem. So it's not that corporations need to make arrangements to buy from Black. Or looked at differently, we could say that were she to get rid of that buying power, marketing, branding approach and link with my approach, my after party approach, if we're going to try to find overlap, we might have some same page here. In other words, because if what she's on some level advocating is a policy adjustment that these corporations have to adhere to that redistributes their wealth through either hiring or supporting Black suppliers and other businesses, to help theoretically through trickle down the Black community. So on the level of policy, we would have some overlap. And then if we just went a lot farther to something far more redistributive, we might be on the right path. But essentially, she's just taking the economic piece and saying, if we can get some money through some Black businesses being supported and some Black executives being hired, then we as a collective should count that as a victory and can count that towards our economic improvement. And that again just takes the very bourgeois class elitist argument and says if a few of us are doing well, or if the 20% that have 80% of the wealth are doing well, then we are doing well. But there was something that I found in trying to learn more about these venture capitalists, dominant venture capitalist groups like BlackRock,
So where
that I think overlaps here and with some of the other stuff we've been talking about very well. So real quick, and I'll put the link to this in the video as well, because this video is actually a very good and entertaining look at the history of Larry Fink and BlackRock venture capital, and it gives you an insight more than I'll be able to do right here into just how powerful they are. But they control at minimum $9 trillion in global assets. Wow. And if as the video is correct, and Vanguard, the group that I've been focused on so much because of their appearance in so much of the media stuff that I look at, is actually second to them with, I think, 7 trillion. And then beyond that, there's some overlap between the two. But the point is that starting at that 9 trillion, through their platform, their trading platform, Aladdin, which apparently through some highly technical, I think they have it's a network of more than 5,000 computers that monitors global trading and gets their clients set up to make the best and fastest investment to get the most returns. But they say through that and through all the people that trade through that platform, thereby making some arrangement financially or otherwise with BlackRock, they actually control or have their eyes on more than 20 some trillion dollars in global assets. And in connection, even and without that, in connection with just with, and if you take the even before that, if you take the 9 trillion that they have and the 7 trillion that Vanguard have, those two venture capitalist private equity groups have 75%, I think was the way they broke it down, of US GDP is in there, is more or less, they're worth 75% of the entire nation's GDP, being at just about 20 trillion.
Yeah.
So they have enormous influence, power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to show this one clip because I do think it relates to the work that the folks at the Black Dollar Index and many others are doing and have been doing, and what we're seeing happening increasingly more often with what we're being said is a quote unquote woke culture. So just you know what? Let me just double check and make sure I had the sound thing click. Yeah, I did. I just want to make sure, because this is really fascinating right here. Just check this couple of minutes real quick.
Where does BlackRock go moving forward? What does a man do when he already has everything? In 2019, people were petitioning against BlackRock for being among the top shareholders for oil and coal production. In fact, investing in heavy pollution industries has basically been the backbone of BlackRock's portfolio over the years. So according to Larry, they're making a push towards environmental, social, and sustainable investing. Whether or not they actually believe in this stuff is yet to be known. Nevertheless, it does appear they've made legit efforts to expand into this more eco-friendly market. With new environmentally focused products, they've partnered with activist investors, they backed a shareholder resolution basically forcing ExxonMobil to get serious about climate change. Larry even straight up wrote a letter telling companies that they need to, quote, contribute to society to receive his firm's support. This new push for sustainable investing, or ESG investing, is a big reason why you see so many corporations trying to appear woke these days.
If you want to invest in a company, they will, on their investor relations page, they'll show you their ESG score. ESG stands for environmental, social, corporate governance. And this is where the woke culture comes from. So they've created this kind of phony baloney rating system that says, well, if you, I'm exaggerating, but if you mention that you are, have a green agenda and you believe in carbon credits and you might trade some credits somewhere, then you get a higher score and therefore you're more investable. And it's very interesting to see how big investors like insurance company, institutional investors, they are steering away from anything that does not have the right ESG rating. And so in order to have investors continue to be interested in the stock, which is important for the company, for its perception, certainly for the officers of the company and the shareholders, You have to move this along continuously. And so it's very simple to see why doing a woke ad as Nike or as any other company, Pride Month is fantastic, because you could, Pride is easy. Throw up some flags, show the right people, trans, whatever, and you got a high ESG score.
So it's not perfect, perhaps, but I think it's a pretty good summary of what the corporate world, or how the corporate world views these types of efforts. So whether it's the LGBTQ community coming and saying we want to see more of us here, and them getting the rainbow flag on some display or something to that effect, or activists or Black Lives Matter, or whether it's Black companies or Black marketing and consumer advocates coming to them and saying, hey, what's your Black Dollar Index score? How does that fit in with your ESG rating? It's the same kind of thing. And then when the most elite investors like Larry Fink and BlackRock are telling people, if you want our money, if you know, we need, in other words, as I interpret it, obviously it's them saying, we need some sort of response, some immaterial, unsubstantial response to what we see coming from the people we are exploiting. So before we break out the stormtroopers, let's go ahead and see if this works. And if that means if you know, a show of appreciation. And then, by the way, going to stuff that I do cover in my work, where Nielsen and others are talking about promoting the conscious consumer to Black communities, to say to companies, if you want to attract the new woke conscious consumer, you need to show them that you have Black employees, or that you're willing to put a dashiki on, or that you're willing to make some sort of nod reference to Black Lives Matter. And this is just a grander, more macro version of it, of the same kind of response, saying the environmentalists, the LGBTQ, the Black folks, the immigrants, the whoever are, you know, they need a version of this. So if you want to be more investable, we need you to show, that is, we being BlackRock, need you to show a willingness to lean in that direction, even if just symbolically, and then we'll drop some money on you, and then it'll be good. And it's the same kind of thing. If we need to drop some money to get our Black Dollar Index up, or if we need to drop some money to, you know, hire a Black executive, or hire a Black supply trucking, whatever, cool, we'll do that. And then we'll get right back to the business of making more money than we've ever made in the history of the world. So anyway, you know, there's so much more really to talk about with BlackRock that maybe we'll come back to them.
Well, on that note, really,
yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
Really
you had
quick,
something. Sure.
Yeah, really quick. No, on that note, just a couple of things. One, when you were talking about them kind of justifying, them meaning, you know, these investment companies justifying, you know, it reminds me of in the media, you know, they have the ratings are, there's this real niche kind of micro rating kind of piece. So a lot of times media companies aren't necessarily concerned with ratings overall as much as they are with like shares. And then they have certain segments, like a 15-minute segment, you know, from like the top of the hour to 15, from 15 to the bottom of the hour, and so on. So they break it up into quadrants, and even smaller than that. And that's how they, so you can take a station, for instance, that may be 20th or 15th in the market. And the sales team for that particular station might say, well, yeah, overall, you know, this is where we are with the ratings, but we have a share. We have a share here within this particular time period. So if you run spots, if you run advertisements at this particular time, you know, then, you know, you can still capture, you know, X amount of people, you know, that's typically. And so pretty much that's kind of sort of how BlackRock is being sold. But then also, speaking of BlackRock being sold, when we talk, and they talked about activists and so forth. You may recall that whole show, The Activist, where it's supposed to be like a reality show where people were so-called activists were competing against each other and so forth. There was so much backlash, and Usher was the host of it. So much backlash that they decided that they were going to scrap it. It's not going to be a show. It's supposed to start airing next month. Yeah, they decided it's not going to be a show, but, you know, of course, they're going to put they put money into it. It's already been taped, so they're going to turn it into a documentary. And it's worthy to note that CBS was going to air it. CBS is under the subsidiary of Viacom, which is also one of the which also has as an investor BlackRock. As a matter of fact, they have a building called the BlackRock building in New York City, which they just sold like this past week. Last month. They sold the BlackRock headquarters in New York City for $760 million. So it just kind of shows you just all of the intricacies of that. So there's BlackRock again, even with this activist piece. So just to that point of, trying to, big up the activists and so forth and show that you got some kind of connect, because ultimately that means that they're gonna try to translate that to some dollars for black formatted, stations and so forth and programming.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Thanks for that. I wasn't up on that part. That's deep.
Yeah.
But no, every time I look up any for my previous work media group, BlackRock and Vanguard were right there. And Vanguard actually I was even see more often, but BlackRock clearly has even more. So anyway, we'll definitely have to come back to that for sure. So listen, all right, so let's take a quick let's get to one of these other ones real quick here, because I did want to get to this censorship story, but actually there's a whole there's so much stuff happening. Anyway, quick transition. We'll be right back here with I Mix What I Like. Don't go anywhere, everybody. Peace. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.